Welcome to Palace Confidential. It's your weekly look at all things royal, brought to you from the Mail's HQ in Kensington. I'm Jo Elvin, and after a couple of special editions, we are back with your usual programme, and it's good to be here. On my panel this week, we have Kate Manzi, Assistant Editor of the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths, who is the paper's editor-at-large, and from the Daily Mail, my TV husband and would-be usurper, Daily Mail Diary Editor Richard Eden. Welcome to you all. Lots to talk about, from Fergie's finances to the Queen today, but we're going to kick things off with the announcement of a new book that has the potential to set the cat amongst the pigeons again at the Palace, both here and in California. What can you tell us about it, Richard?
This is really interesting. This is a book by Valentine Low, who's the Times' royal correspondent. And our viewers might remember him because he was the man who broke the story about the alleged bullying of staff by Meghan.
Yeah.
Now, that was a great story which came out, I think, the day before the explosive Oprah Winfrey interview, and it led to a sort of internal inquiry, which, of course, we never really heard the results from. But his book is called Courtiers, and it's going to be all about sort of the figures, the men in grey suits, you know, as Princess Diana used to call them, and the figures that have been really sort of pilloried by Harry and Meghan.
Making that allusion to making sure the Queen has the right people around her.
Exactly.
That was a bit of a dig, wasn't it?
Everything's always blamed on them.
Yeah.
So it'll be really interesting to see what Valentine Low's saying, and perhaps he's giving, you know, a different side of things. So hopefully stand by for some scoops.
So, Kate, the last few years have been full of behind-the-scenes turmoil, and a story involving lots of stories from Courtiers, that's got to be a goldmine of gossip.
Well, yeah, I think we so often used to hearing about the principals, as they call them, the members of the royal family, but this is about the people kind of, you know, to borrow the phrase from Hamilton the musical, people who were in the room where it happened. And, yeah, I mean, often people think they're these shadowy characters, but it's a world, you know, it's a fascinating world, and the jobs that they have, they're really seeing kind of history in the making. So it'd be really fascinating to see what kind of, you know, details that the author brings to light with this, because we've heard about things going on behind the scenes. You know, was it true? Wasn't it true? And to go beyond the palace walls, I think, you know, I find that quite exciting, because it's not just what we see the royals doing out in public, but what happens behind the scenes. And I'm sure viewers of Palace will think that that's quite fascinating as well. I don't know whether the average reader is truly that interested in the men in grey suits, as Harry calls them, just like his mother. But certainly I am. I'm fascinated to know.
But I'm curious as to what kind of sources they will be. Who's allowed to speak? Surely everybody's NDA'd up to the gills in the Palace.
My understanding is that, I mean, this is Valentine Low, who's been covering the beat for decades. So my understanding is he has had pretty good access from speaking to Val. And he's a nice writer, so, you know, fair play, I look forward to reading it.
Charlotte, you know, they're like buses, not one, but several at once. We've got this book, we've got Harry's biography, we've got Angela Levin's book on Camilla due out. Is there a risk that these books will distract from the royals' day-to-day duties and engagements?
Well, I think any publicity is good publicity, and I think
depends who you ask. I think. I bet the Queen doesn't think that.
Well, but Angela's is going to be very positive about Camilla, and would we really want to be seeing Camilla in the pages of all the papers otherwise? Maybe not as much as some of the younger, more glamorous ones. So I think it'll be good. I think it will help focus our attention on whatever they're up to that week, royal engagement-wise.
Do you think the Palace are thinking, oh God, what now? We
They're used to this. It's been going on for decades. People, there's always 10 books a year. They're used to it. Obviously, the Harry one, however, might be a bit of a different
When
they're not normally the subject, are they? So this time there must be a bit of nervousness, and I think there is a slight apprehension that, you know, we're going to be. They like, you know, being the kind of people, faceless people behind the scenes, you know, pulling the levers and things like that. The idea that they're going to be named and featured in some of these stories that are going to come to light, and anecdotes that are going to come to light in the book, might give them pause for thought.
I suspect the press officers are probably cancelling leave for the whole of autumn, aren't they, when these books come out?
Or all resigning. One of those.
Well, there is a lot of turnover, actually, so we're going to have new press secretaries coming into play in autumn, so maybe it won't be a witch hunt.
There might be a witch hunt behind the scenes, you know, who's the leaker.
My goodness. When are you three going to write your royal books, your royal tales?
God.
Well, I don't think nobody's got any time.
Well, let's move on, because Kate, it's been nearly a year, I can't believe it actually, since you broke the Cash for Honours scandal involving Prince Charles's charities. And
I know.
a report last week suggests that the police don't seem particularly in a hurry to investigate.
Well, it's hard to believe it's been a year, isn't it, since we published that letter, which was the kind of bombshell letter from Michael Fawcett, which said, oh, we will help this Saudi tycoon get British citizenship, we can help him get a knighthood. And that letter's been at the heart of this Metropolitan Police investigation. As we know, Michael Fawcett, Prince Charles's right-hand man for so many years, had to step down as a result of this. And there are stories that this had kind of gone into the long grass. Now, I was speaking to somebody at the police recently, a contact, who was saying, what you have to understand about these things is that they're incredibly complex. We're talking about money that was coming from overseas into a foundation. Some money went missing. There's lots of things for them to investigate.
Richard, do you think this smacks of a bit of a case of, oh, let's just hang on in there and just pretend nothing's going on until it's gone away?
I mean, that is the impression you get, isn't it? I mean, what I'd like to see happen is them addressing the whole question of whether it's wise to have these charities, you know, this huge charity empire where they need the millions coming in. And we've seen, they published figures this week for the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge's foundation, and they've been brilliant in terms of fundraising, but that means there's a lot of rich individuals who are handing over money, and then you feel the need to keep it up. They should be just patrons of Save the Children or Oxfam or whatever, and then leave all that side of things, fundraising, to the charities. I just don't think it's a healthy route to go down, but I have to say there's no sign of that happening.
Well, as I said in the
royal families, what are the royal families without their charities? I mean,
no,
that's
but I think
job.
Richard's point is they could patronise other charities without founding them.
And that's what I said in the paper. You know, I did an opinion piece recently saying exactly the same thing, that, you know, if Charles creates a charity, it's something that he decides the country or the world needs. But actually, perhaps it should be more listening mode, looking at the charities already out there and meeting needs that already exist in the community, not ones that he's decided that they need to support.
I mean, it would be a big thing because he's put so much time and effort into establishing this network of charities which do great work. So to give that up will be a big thing. But, you know, he is going to become king and he will have to give things up. And I think they should just... Well, I'm afraid I think they should close them down.
Well, he's done that really well with the Prince's Trust, which has done some incredible work with young people getting jobs, opportunities, skills, and that sort of thing. And now pretty much just runs itself. You know, the Prince goes to visit, and it's very much its own entity, and starting up all around the world. So I think that is a great kind of blueprint.
Yeah, that would be the way to go.
That they ought to do with the rest of his charities.
It's fascinating, but let's move on, because Charlotte, the Duchess of Cambridge, I want to just discuss briefly, received an honour this week from a magazine that she hasn't always enjoyed the most harmonious relationship with.
Well, I think Tatler and the royals go hand in hand, but there was an incident 2 years ago when Tatler wrote actually a very insightful and in some ways very flattering piece about Kate.
But except the bits where it was really deeply unflattering.
But they did veer onto the territory of her mother Carol, which I think is actually the really sensitive issue here. I mean, they're clearly very touchy about anything to do with Carol and her upbringing and her being upper middle class, as the piece said.
But also saying that William had basically appointed Carol as like an unofficial mother. I remember that bit as well.
I think that's quite a flattering thing to say. I think it's lovely to love your mother-in-law, but anyway, it was a touchy subject. It got them in a bit of trouble, and clearly now Kate is kind of back in the pages of Tatler because she got their #1 best dressed.
Yes, so
and it was incredibly flattering, the article.
Well, shall we have a look and see some of the looks that got Kate that gong this year? of Cambridge, showing there why she's been named as Tatler magazine's best dressed for 2022. What's wrong with us? Where are we on the list? Goodness me. But from a future queen to the present one now, and Kate, Her Majesty has arrived in Balmoral with less of the fanfare than she usually receives.
Yeah, she would normally have a kind of inspection of the guard. It'll be public when she moves from, her normal lodgings into the main castle. But that didn't happen this year, and it was down to the Queen's comfort, they said. So we didn't even see any pictures. It all took place behind the scenes. But I'm told that she definitely will leave Balmoral, or certainly intends to leave Balmoral, to come down to see in the new Prime Minister when that happens at the beginning of September. So she would normally stay until kind of early October at Balmoral, but she's going to break her holiday. That's the plan. Come down, say goodbye to Boris, invite the new Prime Minister to form a government and welcome them in, and no doubt then go back to Scotland. So not a usual break as such, but a sign that they are considering the Queen's comfort, but behind the scenes there's this message, I'm still doing the job. It's one of the kind of personal prerogatives, as it's called, of the Queen to invite the new Prime Minister to form a government. She very much intends to do that in person, if possible, at Buckingham Palace. So it's a kind of mixed messages, they're considering her comfort, but all the while saying she's still doing the job.
She probably really wants to do it. She probably wants to welcome the new Prime Minister and say goodbye to Boris.
I was thinking, what a buzzkill to have to break your holiday to do that. Oh my goodness, but a lorry full of furniture arrived the other day, apparently. Can we assume that it's all about that's keeping her comfortable up there?
I think so. I think, there's been plans put in place already. We've been told there's a sort of stair lift at Craiggowan Lodge where the Queen likes to stay when she's not in the main castle. So I think everything's been done. I mean, she's 96, as we all know, and good. I'm glad that she's been made comfortable, frankly.
And it's good if you can take your favourite bits of furniture on holiday, isn't it? I'm sure we'd like to, take our favourite armchair or something.
I feel like we take enough on holiday as it is without all that.
She has got her own
Kitchen
train.
sink.
Why not take the piano and the kitchen sink and everything else?
Yeah, and especially when you don't have to move it. Somebody else takes care of that.
Easy.
But Richard, someone else who may need to move some furniture soon. The Duchess of York, apparently, according to reports, she has agreed to buy a Mayfair mansion. It says mansion here. What can you tell us?
Well, it is apparently, almost £7 million. So I think that definitely qualifies as a mansion in my book.
A maisonette.
God, you don't get much for £7 million in Mayfair
You
these
really
days.
don't. That's why I'm wondering if it really does qualify as a mansion.
But, as we know with Fergie, there's always something new. There's always something going on. And this is, she's bought these properties apparently as an investment for their daughters, Princess Beatrice and Eugenie. But it caused outrage among a socialite who had sold them her chalet in the Swiss Alps, and she'd eventually agreed a lower price on the basis she thought they were struggling for money, and she thought that Prince Andrew might go to prison in America anyway. We ought to say here that he was never going to go to prison. It was a civil case.
Yeah.
But this woman seemed to be under great pressure, and she's outraged that suddenly Fergie's found these millions.
Charlotte, a lot of people will be asking where that money comes from. I know that you have a theory about this.
I have a theory. I can't actually tell you because we can't trust Richard Eden. But
I quite understand.
I'll put it in my column tomorrow.
But listen, the deeds aren't out for another 6 months, and I just wouldn't be surprised if Sarah Ferguson's name wasn't the only name on the deeds. I shall say no more.
I mean, surely they must realise, Kate, that this is going to be scrutinised to the high hilt.
Well, absolutely. It wasn't so long ago that Fergie was doing a deal to pay just, I think, 10p in the pound to all her debtors. So there's lots of people she owed money to. They did a deal that she wouldn't pay them back the full amount. They'll now be thinking, hang on a minute, I wasn't paid the full amount that you owed me, and all of a sudden you've millions in the bank to be able to afford this sort of investment property.
Maybe she got lucky on the scratch cards.
Yeah, wouldn't
Do you
blame her.
think? Yeah.
Could possibly be.
She
Can you
can't
imagine?
possibly be tapping up her wealthy friends again. I mean, it's just...
Well, it seems to be her friends were keen to suggest that it was the success of her books. She's been busy writing sort of Mills and Boon type books.
How many copies did she sell of those?
Big deal.
But I think with Sarah, it all says to me of Sarah Ferguson, she's such a survivor. Everything that she's come through.
I mean,
you have to hand it to her. I mean, it's incredible.
Actually, it's quite a nice thing she's doing. She's trying to leave a nest egg for her daughters. It's just that she doesn't have an egg to nest.
Now, Richard, When I ask you this, please be assured it's not because I hate you, but put yourself in the shoes of Fergie's advisors for a second. Who would want that? But what would your advice be to her at this juncture?
I can't offer Fergie advice. You know, I need to take advice from Fergie. You know, anyone who can write some rather obscure books and make enough money to be buying a £7 million house, you know, she ought to be giving financial advice in the coming, you know, crisis we've got
job,
here.
Richard.
Exactly.
Milton's
from now on.
No, I think the only sensible advice would be, as she's doing, would be to try and keep your distance from your estranged husband. Lee said soonest mended when it comes to Prince Andrew.
Do you think she would listen to that one? I don't know.
No, she's been incredibly loyal, hasn't she?
Probably best we're ending there. That is all we have time for this week. My thanks, huge thanks to Charlotte Griffiths, Kate Manzi, Richard Eden, and to you, of course, for watching. We'll see you next Thursday. Bye-bye.